Good morning. Thank you for coming to our Tech Talk. It is August 30th, 2023. And like I said, Corey Bull is with us from Hoffman. Um, Corey, take it away.
All right, thanks, Todd. Appreciate the intro. Good morning to everyone. I'd like to thank y'all for the time today, and thanks to the Reynolds Company for setting this up, and inviting me to speak to y'all this morning. Like you said, my name is Corey Bull, territory account rep for Hoffman. I've been in this industry for about 10 years, and with Hoffman for the last three. Let me go ahead and load my presentation here. So I've been I cover the Dallas Fort Worth area all the way up to Sherman, and I also cover the Tyler Longview areas as well as out to Waco. So let's dive into some thermal audits. So here's a little bit of our agenda this morning. I'm going to go over what exactly a thermal audit is, some good customers to target, and then go through a step-by-step guide of how to perform a thermal audit. After that, just going to give you some brief information about some aftermarket services and some resources available. And then I'll do a cooling selection tool demo where I'll show you how to input all the data you collected on the thermal audits and how to appropriately select an AC and provide a recommendation. So what is a thermal audit? A thermal audit is a free service that we as nVent Hoffman reps provide, as well as our distributor partners like the Reynolds Company. And it basically is divided into three parts: enclosure inspection, thermal analysis, and recommendations. For the inspection part, we'll get into more details later, what all we're inspecting and the notes that we need to take on each enclosure, but we'll take down all the necessary information in order to properly select a cooling solution. The thermal analysis, using a simple thermal imaging gun, we can get an idea of just how hot the internal temperature inside that enclosure is, identify any kind of drives that may be causing excess heat. And then finally, we'll provide a list of recommendations, and it'll be an easy to read report on a full list of all your enclosures with our recommendations for any cooling upgrades or any kind of replacements that you may need. And I'll show you a couple examples later on so you can get a visual of how simple these reports are to read. How does a thermal audit work? It quickly identifies problem areas and other compelling evidence of excess heat that can affect performance and potentially damage your critical equipment. We will then recommend Hoffman Thermal Management Solutions to help you minimize downtime and reduce maintenance costs. Some simple benefits of thermal audits are extended operational life. It'll help prevent catastrophic failures, help you sustain productivity, and help you maintain any equipment warranties that you may have in place. And additionally, thermal audits can give you a good picture of the current situation going on with your panels. It's an easy to read report we provide that'll allow you to have a full evaluation of your equipment, what enclosures already have cooling on them, and which enclosures may be targets for any cooling needs in the future. Now, what customers and verticals are good targets for a thermal audit? Pretty much every vertical can be a good target for thermal audits. Any type of production facility, processing plant, wastewater facility, oil and gas, anything that has a lot of drive panels can be good targets for thermal audits. For example, I live here in the North Texas area. We've got a lot of food and beverage. We've done several audits at companies like Pepsi, Refresco, Bimbo Bakeries, Campbell Soup, just to name a few. In the automotive industry, we've done companies like Peterbilt to GM, and I know over in the Rust Belt, we've done pretty much an audit at all the manufacturing companies up there as well. Pretty much any kind of transportation facility, wire manufacturer, medical supply company, chemical plants, you name it. Any kind of facility that has a drive panel would be a good target, and it'd be something that you can talk to them about. Some key questions to ask and some best practices for thermal audits. It's really important before you start and doing a thermal audit to understand the customer's facility and what pain points they may be having. Before any audit, I always like to sit down and meet with the customer for five quick minutes just to get a quick rundown of the facility and identify which enclosures may have issues overheating, new production lines that may have been built, drives added to panels. That way you can get a better idea of the facility, and the more information you can gather, the better. Basically, we'd just like to know as far as upgrades concerned, if they've added any kind of change to the system. Have you added additional lines, production lines to the facility that may cause excess heating? That's something to consider. Failures. Have you been having problems with enclosures over and over again, overheating? that's something to look at as well. There's been countless times I've been out to a facility and the door is open, the big giant fan sitting out there because the enclosure is overheating added because of an added drive or something like that. And then something to consider as well is the labor costs. Shutdowns can cost, millions of dollars in lost production, and it's something that can be potentially avoided just by installing an air conditioner or monitoring the heat load and what's going on inside your enclosure. Thermal audit, very easy to perform, just 5 simple steps. Before you enter a facility, though, make sure you're properly prepared. Each facility is different, so I keep a box in my trunk of my car that contains all my PPE. Varies from place to place. That way, you're always prepared and whatever you may need, whether it's just steel toes or vest, safety glasses, all that. Make sure you're prepared to have anything that facility requires. Also, make sure you bring a thermal imaging gun. That way, you can take down all the temperature readings you need. Tape measure, very important to bring a tape measure so that way you can get dimensions of the enclosure, and then any kind of pen and paper or your phone to write down whatever information and notes you do take. So step one, very important, to know the dimensions of your enclosure. Depth is usually the tricky part. Always make sure you pay attention to the depth to ensure the cooling solution will mount properly. A lot of times you're mounting an AC on the side of enclosure. Sometimes the depth is a little too small and have to get one of our narrow models or have to get creative. Just pay attention to the dimensions and make sure you're aware of the dimensions, height, width, and depth of the enclosure. Step two, just determine what cooling solution method to use, whether you use an open loop cooling versus closed loop cooling. Majority of the time, we're not going to use fans. These facilities get pretty hot, and majority of the time it'll be AC. But every once in a while, you got a panel that's too small for an AC, and a simple fan will work. So just make sure you're aware of what the proper cooling solution would be. Step three is to measure the temperature of the air in the interior of the enclosure. I always, with my thermal imaging gun, take just a quick reading of my notebook to get a good ambient temperature of the room, so that way you know what kind of temperature you're dealing with there. And then whenever you should have someone walk in the facility with you, and then whenever they open the enclosure, take a reading of the top inside portion of the enclosure. That way you can get the heat reading as soon as the enclosure is open and have a better idea before any kind of cool air or anything else gets inside there. Step four, identify available electrical power. Very simple, 120 volt, 230, 480. What are we doing? Just make sure you're staying consistent with the voltage being run in and out of the enclosure. And then last step is just to perform the calculations and create a report. A little later in this presentation, I'll walk you through the cooling selection tool to show you where and how to input all the information you've collected. One little thing I like to use on my thermal audits as well is to take pictures of the enclosures. I always make sure to ask permission from the customer before taking any photos, but that way you can reference the area surrounding the enclosure to remember any space constraints. Is there a giant wall where there's no room for an AC? Is it tight with conduit being run, whatever it may be? I do like to take pictures of any existing ACs as well. It can be very helpful when creating the report. You can cross-check the current cooling solution and see if the BTU matches correctly to your calculation. Sometimes ACs are undersized, and that just happened to be what was in stock. Could lead to failures down the line, just something to keep in mind. Also, most manufacturers list the date of production on the unit, and you can make a note of this in your report as well. If the AC is, over 10 years, but still working, I like to make a note of that and get it on the customer's radar that, it's over a decade old, and ACs usually don't last more than 10, 15 years. Just get it on the radar that may be something to be replaced in the next few years. All right, now we do have a full range of aftermarket services as well at nVent Hoffman. Most basic is our installation services. Whether you're replacing an existing unit or installing a new one, we do have field technicians all over the country and the world that can help you install the AC and make sure you're back up and running. We do have a preventative maintenance program. If anyone's interested, I can give you some more information on that. But basically, we have a regular preventive maintenance plan where we will identify and rectify issues based on conditions such as dust, high humidity, high heat, oil, corrosive environments. Pretty much, we have a full team that'll help you maintain your equipment and get the extended life as much as possible. And as well as repairs, we've got standard on-site repair service. We've got, I believe, over 8,000 field repair technicians around the world, and we can get you someone close to your area and make sure your machine is up and running. And of course, we do offer factory repairs. So if you need to send it back to our facility in Anoka, Minnesota to do some diagnostic and repair services, we can do that as well. Additional resources, I'm gonna just drop out of the PowerPoint for a second. So this is our thermal audit portal. Very easy to get to. It's just hoffman.nvent.com/thermal-audit-portal. And from right here, here's the cooling selection tool. I'll go through that in a second. And from here, you have any kind of resources that you may need. Here are some resources on the program we do, a sell sheet, basically just kind of the information I went over. Here is our full enclosure cooling solutions brochure, just a smaller version that you can send to any kind of customer with every AC that we have. Some more information, and then something new this year. We have an AC inventory program that we've got going on. The most important thing when we're doing all these thermal audits is making sure we have the products on the shelf. So we've come up with a program with some of our most popular and most bought SKUs, so that way they are readily available, and then we can get them to your customers within a week or two at most, if not already in stock. So just kind of a full list of enclosures that we have readily available to ship. And then last, we're just going to do a quick there we go. Here's our cooling selection tool, and then very simple to get to as well. Cooling-selection.nvent.com brings you to this nice little home page right here. And this is where you can input all the information that you took on your thermal audits. So right here, you can change the language if you need to, which region you're in, Fahrenheit to Celsius, all that good stuff. And then here's where we'll start inputting some information. So I'll just kind of run through a quick one just so you can see how it works. Let's just let's do a 72-inch high, 48 wide, and an 18 deep. And then right here, you can change up if most of the time we do a side mount ACs, but if it's, space constraints or whatever it may be, any kind of conduit interfering with the enclosure, you can change it up to a top mount, front, back, rack mount, whatever you may need. And then you scroll down here. If you've been to many facilities where the enclosure is not just your standard ANSI 61 gray, it's a blue enclosure, it's a red one, orange, whatever it might be, you can change up the color of the enclosure as well, switch from indoor to outdoor, and then this is where you can change your power input. Let's just say this one's 230 volts. All right. Moving down to the heat load. The max temperature outside the enclosure, this is the maximum expected temperature of the ambient air. So earlier when I referenced, I just take a picture or an image of my notebook. You can get an idea of the ambient temperature. It's really hot here in Texas still, so let's go with 105. And then your maximum desired temperature inside the enclosure, that's as high as you want the temperature to be inside that enclosure. Let's go 95. Okay. And then if you're already aware of your heat load, you can just go ahead and put the number of watts right there and select closed loop products, and that'll give you your AC recommendation. If you don't, very simple, you just go to this automations component tab, and it'll pull up a list of things. You can add components, VFDs, servo drives, transformers, whatever you may need. So let's add a couple of VFDs on here. Let's do 10 or 210 horsepower, and let's add 150. So right down here, it'll give you your total heat load, and then you can go down to this recommended products, select this closed loop products tab right here, and it gives you two solutions right here. It gives you a recommended capacity of about 6,000 BTU, and it gives you the idea of what the enclosure or what the AC would be. Here's the full part number. You can switch it to stainless steel if you might need it. If you forgot to put that in there. Select remote access control if you'd like to monitor it remotely, anything like that. And then very simple, just to save this, scroll down to the bottom of the page. You can click on a PDF. Let's do ABC for the company, add my name, and the distributor. Click on save. And then it gives you an easy to print, easy to present to your customer report of what that enclosure is. You can put any kind of additional information and just save it as here. This was the line oven one or VFD panel one, whatever you want to call it. You can save this report and send it in a nice, easy to use, easy to read report to your customer. And then just have a couple quick. Here's kind of an example of the report that we will send out when we finish a thermal audit. Very simple to read, very easy. You just got your machine number here, whatever you call the enclosure, the height, width, and depth of the enclosure, the ambient temperature that we read, a maximum ambient temperature that would be just, some days you do an audit at 10 in the morning, or sometimes you do it at 4 in the afternoon, the temperature is going to vary. You can add your coolant, the temperature inside the enclosure, the solution voltage, any kind of existing AC that's already on the unit, the serial numbers, and then this last column is the most important. That'll be the recommended Hoffman solution. So we'll put our catalog number right there for you. Easy to read, very simple, very easy to follow and save for later wherever you might need it. And then here's just another example of a full report that we'll put together, highlighting some specific enclosures that we recommend upgrading. You can see this image right here showing 104 degrees inside. This one's 119. Just kind of gives the customer an idea of what exactly is going on. They obviously can see where the most heat's being given off inside these enclosures. And then at the very end, yep, same thing with the enclosure name, current ACs, and our recommended upgrade. And with that, that is all I have today. I'd like to thank everyone for the time this morning, allow me to come and speak with you. Hopefully you learned a little bit more about thermal audits and how we might be able to help you. If you have any questions, please let me know. I've got my contact information listed here in case you have any questions you want to take offline or something pops into your head a week later. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. And thanks again, and I hope everyone has a great Labor Day weekend.